In the bustling city of Lagos, a young man named Benjamin, just 28 years old, was known for his ambitious nature and striking looks. He stood tall with a muscular frame, caramel-toned skin, and piercing brown eyes that seemed to hold a world of dreams. Having grown up in a small town, Benjamin had come to Lagos to chase success. By day he worked tirelessly as a real estate agent, and by night, he dreamed of building a future that would secure his place among the elites of society. However, his life took an unexpected turn the day he met Beatrice. Beatrice was a 60-year-old businesswoman who exuded elegance and grace. Despite her age, she carried herself with a youthful aura that made heads turn wherever she went. With silver streaks woven into her jet-black hair and a confident smile, she was the picture of sophistication. Beatrice was a widow who had dedicated her life to building her empire after her husband's passing years ago. On a fateful afternoon, she walked into Benjamin's office, looking for a new property to invest in. What began as a professional interaction soon turned into something neither of them could have predicted. The air was charged with an energy Benjamin couldn't quite explain the moment Beatrice entered the room. She was unlike any woman he had ever met. Her confidence, intelligence, and the way she spoke with authority captivated him. Beatrice, on the other hand, couldn't ignore the young man's charm and professionalism. He had a way of making her feel seen, a feeling she hadn't experienced in years. What started as a discussion about property investments slowly morphed into conversations about life, ambition, and love. Over the weeks that followed, Benjamin found himself looking forward to Beatrice's visits. Each meeting brought new layers to their relationship, peeling back the guarded walls they had both built over time. Beatrice saw in Benjamin a drive and sincerity that reminded her of her younger self, while Benjamin found solace in Beatrice's wisdom and maturity. What started as admiration soon began to evolve into an unspoken attraction, a spark neither of them could deny but were hesitant to acknowledge. The professional boundary between Benjamin and Beatrice began to blur as they spent more time together. Beatrice found herself inviting Benjamin to coffee meetings outside of work, under the guise of discussing investment strategies. These outings soon became more personal. They talked about their pasts, their struggles, and their hopes for the future. Beatrice shared stories of her late husband, her rise to success, and the loneliness that had crept in over the years. Benjamin, in turn, opened up about his humble beginnings and his relentless determination to succeed. Their connection deepened with every interaction, and neither could deny the growing attraction between them. For Benjamin, it wasn't just Beatrice's wealth or her confidence, it was her spirit. She challenged him, inspired him, and made him feel like he was capable of anything. For Beatrice, Benjamin brought a sense of vitality and excitement back into her life. Though their age difference was significant, they found themselves drawn to each other in ways they couldn't explain. One quiet evening, over a candlelit dinner at Beatrice's luxurious estate, the tension that had been building between them finally came to a head. Benjamin, dressed in a crisp white shirt that clung to his athletic frame, couldn't take his eyes off Beatrice as she laughed softly, her face glowing in the warm light. The evening had started innocently enough, but the air was thick with unspoken emotions. As the conversation drifted into deeper territory, Benjamin couldn't hold back any longer. "Beatrice," he began, his voice steady but tinged with vulnerability, "I think about you more than I should." Beatrice froze, her glass of wine halfway to her lips. She met his gaze, her heart racing. "Benjamin, you know we're from two very different worlds," she said softly, though her words lacked conviction. "That doesn't matter to me," Benjamin replied, his voice firm. "I care about you, not the numbers on a birth certificate." Beatrice's heart swelled at his words, but she couldn't ignore the doubts gnawing at the edges of her mind. After that evening, neither Beatrice nor Benjamin could go back to pretending their relationship was purely professional. Though Beatrice initially tried to distance herself, the pull between them was too strong to ignore. Benjamin was persistent, showing up with small gestures that melted her resolve. Flowers delivered to her office, handwritten notes slipped into her mail, and late-night phone calls that stretched into the early hours of the morning. Eventually, Beatrice gave in to what her heart had been whispering all along. One evening, she invited Benjamin over for dinner again, but this time, there was no hesitation in her actions. As they sat together on her plush couch, their hands brushing occasionally, she finally spoke. "Benjamin, I've spent so long building walls around myself, but you've made it impossible for me to keep them up." It was all the permission Benjamin needed. He leaned in, his lips brushing hers in a tender kiss that marked the beginning of their unconventional love story. Their new relationship was a source of joy for both Beatrice and Benjamin, but it didn't come without challenges. Beatrice worried about what her social circle would think of her dating a man 32 years her junior. Meanwhile, Benjamin faced judgment from friends who accused him of being with Beatrice for her money. Despite the whispers and disapproving glances, they leaned on each other, growing stronger as a couple with each passing day. One evening, as they walked hand in hand through the streets of Lagos, Benjamin turned to Beatrice and said, "We can't live our lives for other people. I love you and that's all that matters." Beatrice smiled, her fears melting away in the warmth of his gaze. For the first time in years she felt truly alive and she knew that their love was worth fighting for. As months passed, Benjamin knew he wanted to make their relationship permanent. One evening he took Beatrice on a surprise trip to a secluded beach. The moonlit waves crashed gently against the shore, and the cool evening breeze carried the scent of salt and adventure. Beatrice was dressed in a flowing white sundress, her silver-streaked hair shining in the moonlight. As they walked along the beach, Benjamin suddenly dropped to one knee, pulling out a small velvet box. "Beatrice," he said, his voice trembling with emotion, "you've changed my life in ways I never thought possible. You've shown me love, wisdom, and strength, and I can't imagine a future without you. Will you marry me?" Beatrice's hands flew to her mouth in shock, tears streaming down her face. Without hesitation she nodded, whispering, "Yes, Benjamin. 1,000 times yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, and under the moonlight, their love felt eternal. The weeks leading up to the wedding were filled with excitement, laughter, and anticipation. Beatrice and Benjamin were deeply involved in planning every detail of the ceremony. Though Beatrice wanted a small, intimate wedding, Benjamin envisioned something grand that celebrated their love on a larger scale. After several heartfelt discussions, they struck a compromise: a luxurious garden wedding that would include only their closest friends and family. The garden was transformed into a breathtaking paradise on the day of the wedding. White roses, golden lanterns, and twinkling fairy lights adorned every corner, while soft music from a live band played in the background. Beatrice walked down the aisle wearing a custom champagne-colored gown that accentuated her elegance. Benjamin, dressed in a sharp black tuxedo, stood at the altar, his eyes locked on her with a mix of love and awe. As they exchanged vows, their voices trembling with emotion, there wasn't a dry eye in the audience. Their first kiss as a married couple was met with cheers and applause, and in that moment, their unconventional love story became a timeless testament to courage and devotion. In the weeks following the wedding, Beatrice and Benjamin settled into married life with a newfound sense of happiness. They supported each other in every way, from running errands together to sharing late-night talks about their dreams for the future. But just as they began to fully embrace their union, life surprised them in a way they could never have anticipated. One morning, Beatrice began to notice subtle changes in her body. She was unusually tired, her appetite shifted, and she felt faint on more than one occasion. Initially dismissing it as stress from the wedding, she eventually decided to consult her doctor. After a series of tests, the doctor returned with an expression of amazement. "Beatrice, you're pregnant," she said, her voice calm yet filled with significance. Beatrice was stunned. At 60 years old, she never thought such a thing was possible. Tears welled up in her eyes as a flood of emotions overtook her. Disbelief, joy, and fear all mingling together. The doctor reassured her that while the pregnancy would be high risk, careful monitoring and proper care would give her and the baby the best chance of a healthy outcome. That evening, Beatrice sat across from Benjamin at the dinner table, her hands trembling as she tried to find the right words. "Benjamin," she began softly, "I have something to tell you." Sensing the seriousness in her tone, Benjamin set down his fork and gave her his full attention. "What is it, love?" he asked, leaning forward slightly. "I'm pregnant," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The room fell silent for a moment as Benjamin processed her words. Then slowly, his face broke into a wide smile. "Are you serious?" he asked, his voice filled with awe. When Beatrice nodded, tears brimming in her eyes, he stood up, pulled her into his arms and twirled her around the room. "This is incredible," he said, his voice shaking with emotion. "We're going to have a baby?" From that moment on, their lives revolved around preparing for their child. Benjamin took on the role of a doting husband, attending every doctor's appointment with Beatrice and ensuring she followed the doctor's recommendations. He cooked her meals rich in nutrients, helped her exercise gently, and made sure she got enough rest. Beatrice, though nervous about the challenges of pregnancy at her age, found comfort in Benjamin's unwavering support and excitement. One evening, as they relaxed in the living room, Benjamin placed his hand on Beatrice's growing belly and began talking to their unborn child. "Hey there, little one," he said, his voice soft and full of love. We can't wait to meet you. You've already brought us so much happiness and we promise to give you the best life we possibly can. Beatrice watched him with tears in her eyes, overwhelmed by the love she felt for her husband and their baby. As Beatrice's pregnancy progressed, they began preparing their home for the new arrival. Benjamin dove into the task of creating the perfect nursery. He painted the walls a soft blue, added whimsical animal decals, and assembled a crib with meticulous care. Beatrice often sat in the doorway watching him work with a smile on her face. "You're going all out, aren't you?" she teased one evening as he struggled to hang a mobile above the crib. "This is for our son," Benjamin replied, his voice filled with pride. "I want everything to be perfect." By the time the nursery was finished, it looked like something out of a magazine. Beatrice stood in the center of the room, her hand resting on her belly, and said, "It's perfect. Thank you." Benjamin wrapped his arms around her, and they stood there for a moment, imagining the day their little boy would finally come home. As the due date drew closer, Beatrice and Benjamin decided to host a small gender reveal party for their closest friends and family. The garden was once again transformed into a celebration space, with blue and white balloons and a cake that held the secret of their baby's gender inside. When they cut into the cake and revealed the blue icing, the crowd erupted in cheers. "It's a boy!" Benjamin exclaimed, lifting Beatrice into a joyful hug as laughter and applause filled the air. Every milestone of the pregnancy brought new excitement and challenges. Beatrice experienced the joys of feeling her baby kick for the first time and the discomfort of sleepless nights. Benjamin, ever attentive, stayed by her side through it all. One night as they lay in bed, Benjamin whispered, "You're amazing, Beatrice. I've never seen anyone as strong as you." She smiled and replied, "I'm strong because of you. We're in this together." Their bond only deepened as the days turned into weeks, and soon the moment they had been waiting for arrived. One morning Beatrice woke up with sharp contractions. She called out to Benjamin, who sprang into action, grabbing their hospital bag and helping her into the car. "It's time," she said, her voice trembling with both fear and excitement. At the hospital, Beatrice was prepped for a C-section due to the high-risk nature of her pregnancy. Benjamin stayed by her side, holding her hand and whispering words of encouragement. Hours later, the sound of a baby's first cry filled the room, and the nurse handed them their tiny wriggling son. Benjamin held him carefully, tears streaming down his face. "Welcome to the world, Nathaniel," he said, his voice filled with awe. Beatrice, exhausted but overjoyed, smiled as she watched her husband and their son together. When they finally brought Nathaniel home, their house felt complete. Though the sleepless nights and endless diaper changes were challenging, they embraced every moment with gratitude. Beatrice often marveled at the sight of Benjamin holding their son, his large hands cradling the tiny baby with infinite care. "He's perfect," she said one evening as she rocked Nathaniel to sleep. Benjamin kissed her forehead and replied, "He's perfect because he's ours." Life as a family of three wasn't always easy, but it was filled with love, laughter, and the kind of joy that made every challenge worth it. Beatrice and Benjamin's unconventional love story had defied the odds, and with Nathaniel in their lives, they knew their greatest adventure was just beginning.
For more interesting and captivating stories, Oprah Media is just a click away. Thank you for watching.